Keeper of the Lost Cities, Neverseen, Chapter 4. It has to be Brant, Sophie whispered, as she watched the firemen rush around the Piazza della Signora. They'd ignored the shopkeeper's warnings, using their obscurer to slip past the police blockades. The fire hadn't killed anyone, and it had been extinguished before it spread to the other buildings. But the famous Palazzo Vecchio's walls were blackened and crumbling, and the clock tower was leaning more than the Tower of Pisa. The crowds behind them were crying, and Sophie understood their grief. She'd felt the same way the day she watched the elves' capital city of Eternalia consumed by Everblaze. "That wasn't the building we needed, was it?" Fitz asked, as they jumped out of the way of two firemen. "I thought the entrance to the corridor was in some place with a weird name." "The Uffizi," Sophie agreed, pointing to the arched building next to the ruined palace. "But the police have closed off all the landmarks, and an obscurer won't fool sensors and alarms." "Well, I don't think we should stay here," Fitz said. "The Neverseen could be watching." "How do you know it's them?" Dex asked. "Don't humans have fires all the time?" "Can't you smell it?" Sophie asked. Keith sniffed the air. "It smells like burning sugar." "Exactly. I should have recognized it earlier. That's how the San Diego fires smelled. And Brant set those." She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to spot a figure in a hooded black cloak. "But how could it be him?" Dex asked. "He was super messed up when he fled to the ogres. He'd lost a hand, and, most of his face." Sophie shuddered, trying not to picture Brant's bloody, blistered skin. He hadn't even been able to walk on his own, couldn't reach for his own Pathfinder. He'd forced her to get it for him as part of their deal to save her friends. "He survived Jolie's fire," she said, remembering Brant's old scars. She hoped a few of them were left. He deserved to be reminded of the life he destroyed. "Or maybe the Black Swans at the fires themselves," Dex suggested, "to hide from the council or something." "Do they have any pyrokinetics?" Bianca asked. "I hope not," Sophie said. "Even if they do, why would they burn a place they instructed us to go?" "Because this place wasn't part of their instructions," Fitz reminded her. "This is the building next door." "But it still makes it 10 times harder for us to get to them," Sophie said. "Ugh, you guys are totally ignoring the much more important question," Keith interrupted. He pointed across the courtyard to a weathered marble statue. "Am I the only one who's noticed that dude is naked?" Sophie rolled her eyes. "That's the David." "I don't care what his name is," Keith said. "I still don't want to see his stuff." "I'm with Keith on this one," Dex jumped in. Me too," Bianca agreed, blushing bright pink. "Yeah, why isn't he wearing any clothes?" Fitz asked, looking anywhere but the statue. "Because it's art," Sophie said. "Most of the old painters and sculptors did nudes. They were studying the human body or something. I don't know. Why are we still talking about this?" "You're right," Fitz said. "We need a plan. Personally, I think we should keep following the Black Swan's clues. Once we get into that corridor, I bet the rest of their instructions will make sense. We just need to figure out how to get past the security and—" "I'm on it," Dex said, heading towards the Uffizi. Fitz grabbed his arm. "We all have to walk together to stay in the range of the obscurer." Dex muttered something about power trips, as Fitz took the lead. They wove carefully around all the firemen and reporters, reaching the entrance of the museum without bumping anyone. Dex pressed his palms against the stone facade. "You were right about the crazy security, Sophie." "Can you disable it?" Bianca asked. "Only temporarily. How do we get into this corridor thing?" "On the upper floor, through a plain, unmarked door." Sophie could see it perfectly in her mind, which felt strange since she'd never been there. "Okay, I can buy us some time," Dex said, "but I'm going to have to ruin the obscurer." "Is that the only way?" Fitz asked. "No, I thought it'd be extra fun to make things hard and dangerous." "Hey," Sophie said, stepping between them. "No time for fighting." Dix glowered at Fitz as he went back to working, twisting the obscurer apart and tinkering with the gears. He pulled out several cogs and springs and shoved them into his pocket before closing it back up. "Here, Wonder Boy, catch." Fitz caught it with his mind. Telekinesis. It was an elven skill Sophie rarely used, thanks to an epic splotching match where she'd accidentally flung Fitz into a wall. But Fitz clearly didn't share her reservations. He spun the obscurer a few times, probably to annoy Dex, then dropped the gadget into his hand. "As soon as I open the door," Dex told Fitz, "roll that in. Then we run. Everyone ready?" Dex didn't bother waiting for a reply before he tapped his fingertips against the lock and the door clicked open. "Now!" Fitz bowled the obscurer into the museum and it streaked across the floor, blaring white noise and blinding everyone with a flash. "How are we supposed to see where we're going?" Sophie asked as Dex pulled her into the museum. "We aren't," Dex said, "but no one can see us either." "Ow, I just hit my shoulder," Bianca cried. "Maybe it was on another naked statue," Keith suggested. "Ew, what if it was?" "Will you two be quiet?" Fitz yelled. "Everyone follow my voice. I found the stairs." They climbed to the second floor, where the light was slightly less blinding. "Which way?" Fitz asked. "I think we're supposed to go west," Sophie said. "Everyone look for a green room and a plain wooden doorway." They walked by it at first, but Bianca doubled back and called them over. Fitz rattled the locked doors until Dex pushed him aside. "Leave this to the expert." Several agonizing seconds passed. "Any time now," Dex said. "Sorry, this lock makes no sense." "Oh wait, got it." They raced into the corridor, and Dex flicked on the lights before turning to latch the door behind him. "Whoa, this place is huge," Sophie whispered as they climbed the grand stairway. She'd been expecting a dark, cramped hall, but this really was the path of the privileged. The entrance ceiling was gilded and decorated with frescoes, and the walls were covered in priceless paintings. "Better hurry," Dex said, running to catch up with them. "The tweaks I did to the lock won't last. Plus, I can feel cameras, and it would waste too much time trying to deal with them. The Obscura flash might have fried their circuits, but it's better to keep your heads down. And let's get cracking on the next clue." "Wasn't that the one with blood?" Bianca asked. "If it was, think it has anything to do with this?" They stopped in front of a cluster of portraits that looked like they'd been burned and pieced back together. No, those paintings were destroyed during a terrorist attack back in the 1990s, Sophie whispered. "I can't imagine the Black Swan would ever call that blood turned precious." Bianca shuddered. "Humans are so awful to each other." Didn't a pyrokinetic elf just burn another building earlier today?" Keith asked. "Are you saying elves are as bad as humans?" Bianca asked. "I'm saying we're not as different as we should be. Certain elves especially." The bitterness in his voice made it clear he meant his mom. "Come on, let's keep moving," Sophie said, then realized they were forgetting a clue. Before the blood turned precious, they needed eyes that watched eternal. Could it mean the portrait's staring at them? That didn't feel right. Then she spotted a barred round window. "Is this the one we saw in your memory?" Fitz asked. "It's hard to tell. The scene in my head was from the other side of the wall. But I just remembered that these windows were called Casimo's eyes. They were his way of keeping watch as he walked through the city. That's the next clue." "Great. So now the blood part is next," Bianca asked, after a grimace. "Actually, I think I know what that means, and it's not as bad as you're thinking." Sophie confirmed it a few minutes later, when they reached a row of wide, panorama-sized windows. "Yep, we're on the Ponte Vecchio now. There are a bunch of gold shops lining the bridge underneath of us, but they used to be butchers. The Medicis didn't like the smell, so they moved the gold merchants here." Bianca gagged. "Oh, I still can't believe humans eat animals. Did you do that, Sophie?" "Hey, check this out," Keith said, saving Sophie from having to answer. "I'll give humans this. They make their own kind of beauty, even if that river looks pretty brown." The Arno River definitely wasn't an inviting color, but it was lined on either side by pastel buildings, many with terraces and window boxes, like a scene from a painting. But the panoramic view also reminded Sophie of another less than awesome human fact. The windows they were looking through had been added for Adolf Hitler. He'd probably stood right where they were. "Let's go," Sophie said, needing to get far away from the evil in the air. The elves might have done some terrible things over time, but she doubted they could ever match human monsters like Hitler. "We must be getting closer to the next clue," she said, trying to stay focused. "Anyone see a tower? I'm guessing it's part of the corridor somehow." "What do you think they mean about it not yielding?" Fitz asked, as the corridor made a sharp turn. Then another, and another. Sophie stopped. "I think we're here." Versari tore down pretty much anything in his way when he built these corridors. But there was a family named the Manellas who refused to let their building be knocked down. So Versari detoured the corridor around it, and I think that's pretty much what we just did. Keith smirked. "Look who knows all the things." Sophie looked away. Having to wonder if her memories were hers made her wish she could scrub her brain. "The clue said that this is where we'd find the next steps in our journey," Fitz said. Everyone spread out and looked for the sign of the swan. They combed the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Sophie was starting to worry she'd guessed the clue wrong when she realized a long scratch under her feet had a very distinctive curve. "Over here," she called, tracing her fingers along the mark. The curve deviated from its design to make a full circle, but she could still tell it was the sign of the swan. "I feel a latch," Dex said, pressing his palm against the floor. He twisted his hand a few times, miming turning a doorknob. A quiet click made the floor drop away. They stared at the rusty ladder leading down into misty darkness. "Okay, so who wants to climb down into the scary pit of doom first?" Keith asked. "I'll go," Sophie said. "Nope," Fitz told her. "You've almost died enough times. Time to let me take a turn." Or you could just be careful," Sophie said. He flashed his perfect smile. "That works too." He slipped one leg into the opening, testing his weight on the rung before stepping onto the ladder. "Once I see what's at the bottom, I'll let you know if it's safe." He stepped down another rung, then another. The darkness swallowed him on the next step, and Sophie kept one hand poised on the ladder, ready to rush down at the first sound of danger. After an agonizingly long time, Fitz shouted, "All clear." "Yes," another voice called, one Sophie would have recognized even if he hadn't started the next sentence with his favorite expression. "You kids took your sweet time getting here."